Hello everyone and welcome to the INDX webinar series. I'm Karen Lemmons and I'm the Director of Fashion and Toys at AIS. For those of you who are new to AIS, we are Associated Independent Stores and we're the leading independent buying group for home and fashion in the UK and Ireland. We have a buying throughput of around £500 million from more than 300 retail store members, including department stores, garden centres and specialist stores, for example, sports stores. We work exclusively with independents, which range from single stores to regional chains with a combined retail turnover of over £2 billion. We have around 130 staff in specialist buying and support functions, and we're centrally located in the Midlands at Cranmore Park, where our head office doubles as an impressive conference and exhibition centre, which would normally be buzzing at this time of the year with industry shows. So in the absence of live shows, we wanted to ensure that we continue to engage with our store members and provide relevant and useful information in the run-up to retail reopening in April and May, which we're very excited about. We're delighted to be introducing a series of live industry-focused webinars aimed at independent retail businesses. We have an exciting group of expert speakers covering topics from social media skills to customer engagement, and I'd like to thank all of our speakers for giving up their time to present these sessions. There'll be no corporate jargon, just interesting content that we hope you'll find really useful. And if you do want to ask any questions during the sessions, please use the speech bubble icon in the top right-hand side of your screen. It's a speech bubble with the question mark. I'm delighted to introduce Katy Hoare, who's Senior Visual Merchandising Manager at Joules. Katy's going to be talking to us about effective visual merchandising to drive commercial impact. Just a little bit of background on Katy. Katy is a highly experienced visual merchandising manager who's passionate about using VM skills to both excite and enhance the shopper's experience in a physical retail environment, using effective VM to drive real commercial impact. Having worked across multiple brand businesses, including international wholesale, fast fashion, branded clothing, sportswear and home for retailers such as Marks & Spencer, Topshop, Topman, Selfridges and Pentland brands, Katy has spent the last 3 years working for Joules as the Senior VM Manager for Wholesale and Partnerships. Katy lives in Nottingham with her husband Daniel, 2 children, Olivia and Oscar, and her fur baby, Teddy the Shih Tzu. So without further ado, we're going to now hand over to Katy.
Thank you, Karen. I'm just about to share my screen with you. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so as Karen mentioned, my name is Katy. I'm working for Joules, and at Joules, I'm going to let you know that we brighten the lives with the joy of the countryside and we fight for the environment that inspires us. Now, whilst I work for Joules, I'm going to be talking to you about visual merchandising today, and we're keeping it very generic, so that we're going to be talking about all the skills around visual merchandising and where we can most help you benefit your own business. Okay, so an introduction, if I can just get my slides to work. There we go. So what we're going to cover today, so we're going to start off just by explaining what visual merchandising is, a small introduction into that. And then I'm going to focus on just 2 of the areas because I've only got half an hour with you, and normally we try and do a full-day training session, which involves lots of hands-on. But because we've only got a small amount of time, what I really want to do is spend some time looking at how we can understand your space and layout of your stores, and then focusing on some visual merchandising techniques that would help you manage your stock package. So starting off with what visual merchandising is, well, for those of you who don't know, visual merchandising is the practice in the retail industry of optimising the presentation of products and services to better highlight their features and benefits. The purpose of such visual merchandising is to attract, engage and motivate the customer towards making a purchase. I'm going to show you a really small, short video that just focuses on 5 key points, and then I'm going to delve a bit further into a couple of them. So I just need to share with you. Oh, excuse me, slight technical issue. I will show you the first clip. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm really hoping that you could see that clip because I don't think the music came on. Unfortunately, you didn't miss much. It was quite plinky, funky music. But really, the element around this that I want to focus on is that fourth point around really telling a story and considering the customer journey. Telling a story really starts at the beginning of your store and your space, through your windows. But it really needs to come through, and you need to be aware of what you're giving your customers when they're entering into your space. Considering the customer journey, which the video is highlighted there, is around a store's layout being easy to navigate, to have a logical flow and be designed to encourage impulse buys. And through today, I'm going to focus on space and layout and how we can use some techniques to encourage your customers to buy and make your space as enjoyable to use as possible. So with visual merchandising, I often get asked what I do for a living. When I say I'm a visual merchandiser, people often say, oh, so you're a window dresser. And whilst windows do massively come into visual merchandising, because that's the start of your journey, sorry, I'm just getting used to it sounding like it, because it's the start of your journey. It's around creating and presenting your brand. But the second part really is where the commercial side comes into. Your windows should be commercial because they should be showing your best product and your brand. But optimising your selling space is really where you can drive more money and maximise the space in which you're selling. And they're the areas that we're going to be concentrating on today. So starting off with space and layout. I'm going to talk to you about this, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask a couple of questions, and then I'm going to move on to the BM techniques. There's a lot of information in here, so please do feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Also, in addition to this, as I mentioned, we normally do this face-to-face, and it's a full day's training session where we go through all elements around windows, metalwork, space and layout, mannequin styling, for example. What we're doing at Joules is we're creating each of these into training modules, and there'll be short videos that you'll be able to access. So if you're a customer of Joules, you'll be able to go onto Envoy, which is our business-to-business platform, and in May, all of these videos will be available for you to watch. So if any of the areas that I'm talking to you about today you think you'd like to know a little bit more about, please access our business platform, and those videos will be available for you to watch. We're also in talks with AIS to see if we can get them put on their platform too, so there'll be opportunities for you to be able to do that. And you will find that whilst I'll be showing Joules' product, all of the techniques and everything I'm going to be talking to you about today are completely generic. And as Karen mentioned, them are used in the multiple companies that I've worked for and done visual merchandising with. Also on our business-to-business platform, before I move on, we have some product videos. So whilst I'm going to be talking to you about how to display your product, a fantastic selling tool is really knowing a little bit more about where the prints might have been designed, how the product's made, and all of those individual elements that make our products amazing. And we have product videos also available on our business-to-business platform. So back to visual merchandising and talking to you about space and layout. So For me, visual merchandising is very much like a jigsaw puzzle. If I was to sit down and do a jigsaw puzzle, to start off with, I'd pick out all of my edges, I'd arrange things into colours or patterns that would then allow me to create that full picture and that full story. And for me, the space and layout is really those edges, that first starting point of getting those edges for your jigsaw puzzle. Your space and layout is completely unique to your store and to your environment, and how you use it and how you manipulate that space and layout will manipulate your customer's journey and the experience that they're going to experience when they step into your store. So what I really encourage everybody to do, and whenever we do a training session in a store, we always encourage everybody to come out, stand outside the space and really walk into your stores with fresh eyes as a customer would walk into it, and really think about what you see. So space, when used correctly, means that our customers can easily find what they're looking for. The advantages of that are that customers know where to look, that they feel comfortable to browse. They can easily identify bestsellers and new lines. You get them to shop more areas of your store. So you might, for example, have a really awkward space that it's difficult to get people into, or you might have a second floor and you struggle with how to get people up onto that second floor space. So by considering your space and layout and your product positioning within it, you can really help to manipulate that, which then means that you can get people to shop more areas of the store and make more money from your space. Well, a good layout needs to be carefully considered and many elements taken into account. So as I've mentioned, the store architecture, including the physical shape and size of your space, the space in the store and its visual and commercial value. So thinking about those spaces where you don't have to get somebody to encourage somebody to go and shop, that's a key commercial space. And I'm going to be talking about that in more detail in a moment. Thinking about your customer demographic, who's your core customer? You might get a really broad mix, but who are you aiming towards? Is it set up for that customer? Is it easy to access? Have you got inspiring things throughout your journey? Where are your sight lines? And at the end of a sight line, have you got a focal point? Have you got somebody drawing somebody through? And what are your product adjacencies? Product adjacencies are great to manipulate in order to add on sales, increase your average transaction value, and also increase your basket spend. So if you've got an amazing coat, how can we add on maybe some wellies or a scarf or that add-on extra purchase? And really thinking about the sales target and that you want to achieve from that space. So starting off with product adjacencies, the customer journey should be really logical, as mentioned in the clip, with relevant segments sitting next to one another. By doing this, we really encourage customers to shop more of the store and drive more sales. So I've got loads of photos throughout this deck, showing some good examples and bad examples. But good adjacencies for Joules, for example, would be our key coast jacket, and making sure that we cite wellies next to it. Or it might be that we have dresses with collection scarves, or we have leather bags. So thinking about what that customer is buying and what would complement their outfit. Some bad adjacencies, and all photos that you see through this are live examples that we've captured when out and about. So we've got here a men's t-shirt, and adjacent to that some children's back to school lunch boxes and gift sets. So there'd be more appropriate accessories that we could cite with that actually would encourage somebody to purchase. And then here, for example, we've got a really nice dress, but then with a casual gilet. So it's thinking about that full outfit all the time when you're thinking of product adjacencies. The second part around, and this is a really important part for space and space values, is there are 4 different types of space that we generally categorise your space into when we're in any store. These are your orientation space. So this is almost your internal window, the space where everyone walks into. Everybody's going to see that. So that has maximum touch points. Your prime space then is areas of highest footfall. So on these diagrams, these pictures represent the walls. These are small floor fixtures, and we've got a table promotional space in the middle at the front. So our areas of highest footfall, they're near entrances, on walkways. So for example, if someone was to walk through here or to here, they're on arms. No one has to hunt for this product. It's right there in front of you. The third is secondary space. So this is space that are on floor fixtures. They're not in your worst spaces, but people might have to look for it. So for example, new lines and bestsellers we'd never put there, but it could be core lines that you know you can sell, that you can drive volume for, and they're great and ideal for secondary space. And the fourth is discovery space. So this is really hard to see areas of the store, hidden spaces, areas with poor visibility. So this is the kind of place that you might put end of season lines that you know you can't sell through on, or but you don't want to take off the shop floor, or they could be older lines that will still take money but don't need promoting and don't need shouting about. They're also great for managing fragmentation, which again I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. Then we come to fixture placement. So your fixtures and how you position them in the store are what allow you to manipulate people to walk through the areas of the store that you want to get them through to. They really allow you to maximise your primary, secondary and discovery space, and that carries all the way through, even onto our fixtures. Generally, your fixtures will be placed in a linear grid formation, which means that they're front on. This works well in small spaces where you don't need to then navigate people through to an awkward space or towards the back of the store, or they can be angled. This is really great for if you have a concession space, or for example, if you're in a garden centre and then you want to lead somebody into a different mat or a different area within the store. And if you angle this, you can create new walkways to open up back walls and to invite people to shop more spaces in your store. So sight lines, this is what I'd really encourage when you go back to your stores or your spaces, to stand back and have a look at. If you stand at the front of your store, I always say to people, what can you see? What's the first thing that you see? And where your eye scans and moves around a space is your sight line. And at the end of a sight line, you need something inspiring and something worth looking at. There's nothing worse for me in my profession when I walk into a store and there's this amazing walkway and then I've just got big sideways armour product. Nothing's being sung about, nothing's being showcased. We're not giving anybody any reason to walk further back and get to that space that we want to get them to. So strong focal points, for example, that you might want to use to get people to active through there are, for example, tables, which would be your first sight line on entering a store, or a promotional area. It could be a mannequin with rails of new product that you want to highlight and promote a new look. You might use a mannequin or an inspirational floor fixture further into the middle of the floor to again encourage them into that middle space. And then on back walls, you might use a bust or torso, or fixtures or graphics that again will entice people further to the back of the store. Those space and layout values of primary, secondary and discovery space are also used in the metalwork that you use on your floor fixtures and in your walls. So here in this first example, we know that we want to promote this piece of product. We've got depth in it, we've got really good volume, we've got good size ratio of it, and we've got supporting POS that we know we can market it and sell well. So that's why we put it in a primary front-facing location. Our secondary space is utilised on the side-facing metalwork arm. So here we will put lines that we know we sell well on, but they're generally volume lines that we sell each season, but they help to complement that look. And then our discovery space is again where we might have had slightly older lines that have moved through that season but still complement that colour story, or still complement that product story, but aren't the ones that we have in as much volume that we really want to showcase and drive through. So before I move on to VM techniques, I'll just hand back to Karen, who would let me know if there's any questions so far. And if not, I'll move straight on to VM techniques.
Yes, there are questions that come in upon what to hear. What do you think about, so as a department, we have Joules in a number of different spaces, for example, clothing, nightwear, accessories. Do you think that with a brand like Joules, it's better to create a lifestyle area by bringing all of those products together?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question actually, and I've worked for several department stores, and I've tried a variety of different things. And do you know what? This really does depend on your customers and how they shop. So there can be benefits, and if you know your brand is the anchor, and you know that brand, for example, is the anchor that's drawing somebody to shop in an area, and for example, if menswear is new to you and you've not stocked menswear previously, that can really work to the advantage, because what you'll find generally is that that customer who is shopping that Joules area is mum, or the lady of the house, or someone who is then purchasing for children, for their husbands, etc. And you can really use that to your advantage. What I would encourage is, if you believe that you fall into that category, where generally your demographic is female, tends to be aimed more at mum or the lady of that house who is generally shopping, which is a lot of target audiences for department stores. And you find that menswear, for example, or children's wear are slower sellers, then that can really encourage them to shop it. And I would always say, try them. You'll generally know if you set yourself some KPIs or targets that you plan to achieve, or if you've got that set space and you know how much that fixture generally generates for you, but you're having to give it up to another department to try in there, you will know within 2 weeks whether that is paying off for you or not in terms of sales. So it really does depend on your customer demographic and how your customer generally shops your store. If it's the only brand you're going to try that for, it could have a negative impact, but it's worth a trial.
Okay, thank you. And then another one here, we have limited space and we need to maximise the stock levels that we have out on display. Do you have any tips to avoid it looking messy and overcrowded?
Yeah, absolutely. And the next section that we're going to go through, VM techniques, hopefully I'll cover that. Really, we've got a section on density and how to manage high density spaces and what you would give up. That all comes down to metalwork a lot of the time, and how you can edit things through. So hopefully the next section will cover that, but if it doesn't, please ask another question at the end and I'll see if we can give you some more information. Also, the videos that I talked about at the start, they'll also cover how to manage your densities. Managing high density spaces, especially with a brand like Joules, is really tricky. It's a mix of prints and patterns and stripes, but there's some key techniques I'm going to take you through in a moment that should help with that. Okay,
and then just one last question on this bit. Any tips for keeping ranges looking good as they become fragmented?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about fragmentation as well in the next section. So that's really good, because it means that the content we're going to go through should hopefully help you. Yeah. So yes, I'll crack on with VM techniques and we'll get those ones covered.
Thanks, Katie.
Okay, so starting off with VM techniques. So a lot of the techniques that I'm going to go through with you now can be used individually or together, and they're all about giving the product the best visual appeal and stand out. When used correctly, they help improve the look of your store. They really help to showcase any features and benefits of the product that you're trying to showcase or the brand that you're trying to showcase. They should make it easier for your customer to shop, which in turn increases customer spend. We're all shoppers, we all go out and shop, and I think sometimes it's about putting yourself in your customer's shoes. You know, if something's really difficult to find, you've got really on average 3 seconds to convert that customer and that shopper. So if you've managed to attract them, how do we make it really easy for them to pick that item up and head to the till or keep browsing and buy more? So we use 2 techniques for arranging product, one called blocking and one around coordination. So blocking really means about grouping similar types of product together, and we tend to do this more for what we call commodity blocking. So commodity blocking is really around product blocking. So where you block shoes, you might do an outerwear shop, you might do a knitwear shop, you might do block a t-shirt shop, for example, especially around summer and driving a summer shop. This makes it really easy to shop. I don't know about other people, but when I go into a shop like Zara, which I love, sometimes I just want to buy a bag, but all the bags aren't in one place. I've always had a rule that if you're going to outfit build and show products and you have a large bag range, for example, primarily your bags need to be within that bag range, and then you use items to upsell and try and influence people to buy, and do that through styling as well. This way you make sure you're capturing both of your customer shopping types. We also use coordination. So coordination is the technique really that we use the most at Joules. This is around grouping 2 or more products together. It helps us to create inspiring looks, excuse me, show outfits and create that through our merchandising, the way that we display our product in metalwork. And it helps to show people what you might suggest to wear together. It's essentially like having a mannequin but on your wall bay. We also use symmetry and asymmetry. We use this throughout our windows, also on walls and floor fixtures. But VM and product generally work better when there's some structure to it. And in wholesale, where we sell our brand, I always try and encourage people to use simplified metalwork arrangements. And by that, I mean, if you look at the lines, for example, here, you'll notice that they match up. The same here, the lines match up. If we start moving product around, it adds mess to a wall, which when you've got a lot of pattern and print to manage and a lot of different colours to manage, it adds to clutter. And when we have clutter, people get frustrated and don't find it as easy to shop. But we also use asymmetry. So asymmetry we tend to use more in boutique stores or areas where we want to showcase one really key look, but then have complementary plainer colours next to it, which aren't necessary. This allows you to show one amazing look and have essentially a mannequin in your wall bay, but still entice people with a colour collection and ways to wear. This can also be used on floor fixtures, and to answer the point earlier, I'm going to be talking about density in a moment, but how we use this on our floor fixtures also allows how and dictates how many products we're able to get onto our fixtures. So here we've been able to showcase 2 key looks, but on this example we really want to push the coat. It's a key piece for us. We've got a lot of volume and it's a higher RRP, which means that we should be getting more margin from it, so therefore it justifies the space. And then next to it we're able to show up to 3 or 4 items. So to talk further on managing density, so density describes the amount of styles present on a fixture. A low density is a limited number of styles and a high density is a large number of styles within a space. It's really important not to overfill so that customers can shop comfortably. So some examples of metalwork in a low density store. We would use a lot of front facing metalwork and limit the amount of side facing. We would add in displays, POS to try and encourage people into that space. Also, again, we would give more space on a floor fixture. We might add in some ways to wear with footwear, and we might do a few pieces managing fragmentation, but folding them, for example. Here you can see high density examples. So it's a similar product style to the low density, but what we've done is we've added in further D-bars. In this instance, your product with prints on are what should be at your sight line. They should be your focal point so that people are still being drawn into the area without necessarily just having the all bells and whistles display. And again, on this floor fixture, you can see here, we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines plus accessories on here. Whereas when you compare it to the low density example, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's more than double. And that really is down to your metalwork. So when you're laying out your floor fixtures and your wall bays, it's about considering, am I using the right metalwork? Can my customers see the options that are on display to me? But am I giving them pause points by using some front facing? If you were just getting your volumes out and just using D-bars, it would just look like a sale rack, or going into TK Maxx, for example, which screams discount. And I would say that's something that you want to avoid unless you are a discount retailer. Also utilising all space. So for example, where we would have a shelf here, you could move your shoes and actually showcase them there. So you're still keeping everything out, but you're considering where and how you're placing it because you're using the right metalwork. Here are some more examples of high and low density. So again, for example, on children's wear, because their hangers are smaller, we can get away with using 2 front facing rather than just the 1 front facing here. On menswear, it's utilising every piece of space. So we've added on side facing arms, added in shells, taken it to 4 items, but having a full complete outfit on there. So this is where your blocking and coordination comes into your techniques. One way that's really clean and simple when you're high density is to go down a blocking route and use similar styles of products. It means that your arm lengths are the same, it helps it look cleaner, but then making sure that whatever you have front facing, you can have that bit of interest and have that outfit suggestion and encouragement in terms of people buying into that lifestyle and more products. And exactly, here's an example for baby as well. So then moving on to fragmentation, which was mentioned before. So there are some companies I've worked for where they say, oh, if it gets to 3 or less, you must remove it from the floor because it's a fragmented line. That really bugs me because fragmentation and fragmented lines, they're your best sellers or your previous best sellers. It means that the customers have wanted them. So it's not commercial for me to take them off the floor, but if you don't manage them correctly, it can really add to the mess of your space. So here's some hints and tips of what to do. So you'd always remove them from mannequins and torsos or window displays, for example, because again, you don't want to frustrate your customer. If they're coming in and you've already convinced them to buy by showcasing a fantastic top or coat or anything on your mannequin, to then go and find it and realise that there's not a full size range of that can be quite irritating. So we'd always have full size ranges on mannequins and displays. You'd move them to a less visible space. So you're not removing them from the floor, but you're not shouting about them. So here you can see we've placed them at the back of similar product. And by similar product, I would mean you wouldn't, for example, put a long sleeve top behind a short sleeve top because that's going to add to the mess. It has to be a similar shape and style, and it has to complement that colour palette. T-bars and T-arms are another great way of managing fragmentation, but it has to complement the colour story. So again, here you can see there's only 2 items of this product. It would work just as well with 1, but it has to complement that colour story and also the outfit recommendation that you've sat it next to. A great way if you've got a lot of fragmentation is to use the last chance to buy space. When I used to work for Topshop, our last chance to buy spaces were huge. And I remember one store, they were actually bigger than a trend, which we quickly changed. It was a little bit too overwhelming and can look like sale. But if you treat your last chance to buy places and make them feel quite special and premium, so you could, for example, change the hangers. They could all be on wooden hangers rather than plastic hangers, making sure that you highlight the space, you know, that there's some POS to say last chance to buy me, or you know you want me, or don't forget about me. Or another great example, especially for accessories, are using them on tables or in wall bays or on fixture tops to again just try and encourage that extra additional basket spend. So I've already mentioned quite a lot around how we use outfitting to when within so if you're not blocking and you're using coordination, we would always use outfitting. So successful outfitting are when the product within its capsule is really important to inspire the customer to buy the whole look. Printed pieces work really well as standalone pieces, but they work brilliantly when paired with something a little plainer. So avoid merchandising prints close together on the same fixture. Plainer pieces like jumpers, bottom options, gilets, for example, are great as side hanging pieces, as you've seen in the photos. Keeping things really simple for strong outfit combinations. Really think about your customer and what the profile is for how they would wear things. So for example, if we have a store where we know tweed and country work particularly well, we'll make sure that that's in a really key location, and it'd be styled very differently. Our tweed, for example, would be styled differently to how it might be on a high street. So it's about bearing in mind the customer that's buying that and how they would wear it as well. We tend to split our product into lifestyle and collection. So collection is more your premium pieces. It could be a fitted jacket, a beautiful blouse, a nice viscose or premium material dress. Whereas our lifestyle outfitting tends to be more, think country walks, walks along the beach, layering, gilets and jumpers and sweats, etc. And here are some good examples of outfitting and some not as good examples. So for example, we wouldn't want to put a coast jacket, which is a casual lifestyle piece, next to a more formal boutique skirt, for example. And here in terms of lifestyle, we wouldn't necessarily want to put a formal blazer next to a gilet or suggest that as an outfit. We would suggest a gilet worn underneath at one of our Writer's Reign casual lifestyle pieces instead. So Joules is, as I mentioned, quite tricky, but again, these are completely generic merchandising techniques, and this is really about managing your patterns and playing. So colour is a really valuable merchandising tool. Used well, it can show the visual appeal of many products and really support that outfitting that we've talked about. Each Joules product drop contains a new season colour palette, and newness should be highlighted at every opportunity. Where you've got planes and patterns, we try and move those next to each other. Here are some slightly poorer examples, for example, where we've got two front-facing arms and the prints are very clashy next to each other. In fact, it would have been better to bring the gilet, for example, to the front, so at least we had a patterned and plain, or, for example, re-looking at the metalwork and looking how you can get some side-facing on there, which allows you to have a similar amount of print, but adding in a plain really just helps to break that up. And again, here where we've got mixtures of prints, but then everything's stripy, there's nothing to help break that up. So this technique, I'm going to try and explain to you. This works really well in a practical exercise, and as I've mentioned several times, there will be videos to support this. And if you're going to go and watch any videos, this is the one I'd encourage you to watch. This technique and method of visual merchandising is something that I use every single time, and I have done all the way through my 20-odd years of hands-on merchandising. And this kind of goes back to the whole jigsaw analogy. So this technique I call the one-pick rail, and this is basically anytime I go into any store or any space that I've got to re-look at the colour stories or re-look at the product placement, I pick one of everything in that space. So I pick one of everything, because if you're going to re-merchandise, if you're just doing one fixture, it's going to have a knock-on effect to another fixture and another fixture. And even if once a month you can manage to have a total re-merch of a section, then it completely refreshes and energizes that space. It makes the space that's completely new, but crucially, from a commercial perspective, it really breathes new life into older lines or lines that you might have struggled to previously sell through, that can be given new life by re-energizing them in a new colour story. So what I do is I pick one of everything, put it on a rail, and then the next step, I organise that into colour. So for example, all my pinks together, or my reds together, or my blues together, but different tones would sit separately. So for example, with your blues, you might have a royal blue and a sky blue, they would sit separately. Once I've got those, I remove all of my base colours, so my blacks, my navies, and my denims, which could be with anything. They could sit with any colour story because they're generally our base colours. Then I look at what colours can combine. So you might have a key print. So for example, on step 3, if we look here, we've got a print here, which has got a really light blue, a pale pink, it's got some oranges and colours through. And then I will pick complementary colours and combine then groups of colours to create bigger colour stories. So here you'll see we've done that here with a different shade of blue, to the lighted pale blue. And here we've done it with the hot pinks and pulled that together. And over this side, there's more of a red. Then what I start to do is actually look at that and say, well, within each of these different colours, what are which collection or which colour grouping has my best sellers, has my most commercial lines, have the stores that really are new and going to pop and make this special for my customers when they walk in the store, and they become my priority colour stories. Then that allows me to determine where on my shop floor those colour stories are going to be positioned. When I've done that, I then add in my navies and my base colours to help then create outfits, so that within each of those colour stories, I've got credible outfit suggestions to use on either my front-facing arms to entice people in, or those side-facing D-bars to show a full outfit. Then I have a look at the space I've got to merchandise it on, and I start to, sorry, I've skipped a little bit, but we're now on level 6. Step 6, I start to look at what metalwork I want to use. So for example, in one colour story, say I've got 20 lines that I need to get out, I need to make sure that if that's high density, I've got enough side-facing arms to get, say, maximum of 5 options out, and I've got enough forward-facing arms or step arms to get those real peacock pieces and those pieces I want to showcase about that I've got depth and that are new as well. Then once I've laid out my metalwork, I start to place my one picks, and a lot of people, when they merchandise, they tend to just move stock around. It gets really tiring and it hurts your arm and you will get into a mess. But if you can do all the planning and prep and the organisation beforehand, it saves you so much time. It's a bit like cooking, getting your ingredients out to start with, making sure that you're all set up, and then doing the actual moving of it. So I place one of everything on the metalwork, making sure that I can fit everything out and create credible outfits within those colour stories. And then when I'm happy with every space, I fill it and fill that stock up. Now, if you're struggling for space, because I know in a lot of independent stores you might not have your rails or the spaces that you can do this in, I tend to clear one space on a wall and do a couple of D-bars for my one picks, and then work my way around each of the colour stories so that you're continually moving and freeing up your space as you go. And if you can get that right, it saves you so much time and energy, and it makes merchandising way more of a pleasure and less of a pain than trying to move everything at one time. The final step is then to add in any accessories or coordinating products, and then anything that you might want to do to highlight your product. So pop a collar if it's got some interesting detail behind it, open up a lining or roll a sleeve up if there's interesting detail on a shirt cuff or on inside a sweater, for example. So there's just a couple more techniques that I'm going to take you through today before we ask any more questions. One of them is tables. So we tend to use tables a lot in Joules, and these can be really good in smaller independent stores as well. They're brilliant for concession spaces, or if you're in a larger space, so for example a garden centre, and you want to get people to move from each department and want them to feel like they're in a different space, because this can act as an internal window. They're also brilliant for driving commercial opportunities. So if you've got promotional things around Christmas gifting, Mother's Day, which obviously has just been and gone, Father's Day, if you want to create a holiday shop, or for example, if there's a local event going on in your town or your town centre, that you know you've got product that would really support that, it allows you to create that internal window. So then I've got lots of photo examples of different ways of using tables. So you could use them as lifestyle ones, which helps you create a look. Please bear in mind that these are just samples, so I haven't put volume here, but you would of course add depth to this. It's linear at the end of the day. It's got to drive its space, and it's got to be worthy of the space that it's been given. You could use it for groupings to sell blocked product from as well, or here's an example of how you could use a gifting table. Wherever possible, I try and add a rail to a table. So for example, you can see here where we've got an example where the mannequins are dressed in an outfit and the outfit is shoppable behind it. Again, we've got that 3-second rule to convince people to buy. They love the top, it's there, they can pick it up, brilliant, everyone's happy. Here are some examples of really small tables where you can still get that volume out, you can still add that height. Here, and generally when we're in an independent store, we don't have all the things that we might have in a Joules store. A4 paper is brilliant at using as a folding guide, but also when you then fold the product over, it just gives it that bit of bounce and that extra bit of height. Here we've got complementary products. On the lifestyle table, we've got the mannequin that's dressed in the outfit that's here. Again, we've got lifestyle complementary products that really add. So if you're a lifestyle store and your customer, you can entice your customer to buy more and buy into that look and that lifestyle piece around it, then do it. But it needs to be clean. You need to have some white space, and all of the pile sizes ideally need to match. It stops all of the mess. So here are some examples of some not so great examples for tables that we tend to see around. You can see here there's a lot of different materials used, there's a lot of different things. You know, again, going back to that first point, what's my story? What am I trying to sell here? Is it a look I'm trying to sell, or is it just lots of product dumped on a table? It can't feel, everything needs to feel considered. This one's an example where they're great, they've got the mannequin in, but everything's a mess. Tables are difficult to maintain. So if you don't have the staff to be able to maintain them and you can't give it that time and attention, think about whether it's right for you, or actually would a mannequin and a fixture do a better job? This is an example from a major retailer, but again, there's so much on here. What are we trying to sell? What are we trying to show people? It's not just a t-shirt table, it's got a bit of everything on it. So there's an awful lot. How shoppable is it? You know, we've got items right at the bottom here. Are people going to go down? Is this being used more as a stock room? So think about the end use and how you want people to shop it. You don't want it to look like a display, otherwise people won't pick it up. But equally, you don't want it to have so much on no one's going to feel encouraged to touch it. And this is an example where there's a bit too much. You know, there's a lot of mix of genders, which is fine if it was just a welly story. But there's kids wellies, there's adult wellies, there's scarves, there's boxes, there's bags, there's a mannequin, but with no product relation next to it. So again, remember the story. What's the story you're trying to convey? We've talked loads about bestsellers and new lines. Can't stress it enough, just in terms of their positioning. Making sure that they're in prime space, eye level, they're used on mannequins and torsos, on front-facing arms. And when we say increase your density of your best-selling lines, it means that if you're limited on space, make sure that the volume is out on those best sellers rather than everything. See it, like it, buy it, I've mentioned. Again, it's that 3-second rule, getting people to convert when they've been inspired. And then the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is accessory merchandising. I was going to leave this, but I think accessories is quite a difficult area to merchandise. It can be very messy. So I'm not going to read through this, but the biggest piece of advice I would give in merchandising accessories is to consider lines. So it's trying to make sure that your product, you have really clean eye levels. It goes back to that metalwork point about if you start adding complexity into metalwork or fixture placement, you're adding to mess. So trying to keep things clean and easy to shop is the best advice for merchandising accessories. Here are some bad examples, and this is my last slide for you. I wanted to highlight these ones because we see this an awful lot, and I think sometimes people think that by putting a lot in, they're going to sell more. But what again am I meant to be looking at here? I've got a scarf, I've got 3 bags, I've got shoes, I've got branding blocks. Do we need the branding blocks? I would say no, even though I work for the brand that we want to promote. But we'd rather use one branding block in one key location and keep it clean. Here, for example, if we just had one bag with this outfit, it would really complement the outfit and not confuse it. Again, I see this a lot where people think it's a good idea and a good use of space, but actually is it a detriment to me trying to sell this higher price point product, whereas I might just get one, or does it just like someone's placed it there as an afterthought when they've tried it on and can't be bothered to go and put it back to where it's meant to go? So really think about what is showcasing my product in the best way and what's really going to add and increase my basket spend. This is an example of how, again, tables. So when I showed you some good examples of tables, that was how we ended up merchandising it with a rail, a mannequin, creating a look, rather than trying to show a bit of everything that we're selling. Or this was used in advertisement for what's upstairs to try and drive footfall upstairs. Actually, if we'd have showcased some of these products better with then a sign saying more available upstairs, it would have been far more effective than really essentially feeling a bit like a jumble at the front of the store. And that's it from me. So I'll hand back to Karen for if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Katie. Yes, we've got a few questions here. Some of our members buy less heavily into they buy heavily into the tops and knits, but less heavily into the bottoms.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to keep that interesting?
Yeah, we have that a lot actually. In fact, that's really quite common for Joules. So what I would say, or what we try and do within that, is if you had a wall bay or fixture and you're more heavy on your tops and your bottoms, if you have one key outfit, showcase that key outfit in the middle, and then I would go for commodity blocking either side. So for example, if I've got a similar type of top, so for example for us, our harbour top, which is our long sleeve jersey top, people tend to buy into quite a lot of that, and also for our sweatshirts. So what I would then do is build those commodities and those blocks around that key outfit. So if you've only got one or two bottom options, also think about splitting your size ranges up of those, so making sure that where possible you always have your cores double represented, but also using them in two spaces to double represent that and show that outfit build.
Thank you. Any tips for displaying high volumes of small items, for example lingerie and accessories, in a small space?
Yeah, so the last point where I was talking about accessories, that really is about those eye levels and keeping those linear or horizontal lines. I can't stress that enough, to be honest. It can become so, and I would also say really block, so don't worry too much about splitting things up and trying to make things outfitted or lifestyle when you've got lots of small options. Blocking definitely works better. But then think about how you might take those small items and build them into a story somewhere else around your space to do add-on purchases. Also, again, use of tables. So you can use baskets or boxes, or you can buy countertop display units, which are like small pegboards or little Euro hook things, where they give you height to your table, but also allow you to sell small items. So we use that a lot, for example, for key rings or gloves or hats or scarves. Now, scarves can be tied in so many different ways. You can really make them work for you. So if you've got a small space, you can double fold them over and make them quite small. If you've got longer space to fill, you can also do it and elongate them as well. So, but the key tip for smallness and little bitty pieces is really thinking about those lines and how you block spaces within it.
Okay, thank you. Do you make your menswear department, or should you make your menswear department more appealing to men or women, given that women tend to buy for men, but they shop so differently?
You know what? I actually think they do shop differently, but everyone can be inspired in different ways. So we know men and women shop differently, but men tend to shop functionally. So they'll think, I need a jumper. So they will want to go and find a jumper. That doesn't mean that they can't be persuaded to look at other things. So the same rules apply. It's around getting that really key peacock or outfit piece as your centre and outfit building around that. So for example, on a menswear area where you might have a front facing one to really showcase an outfit and show that anatomically, but then doing your blocking within your colours adjacent to it. And that will work exactly the same way for men and women. I would say the primary approach is considering your space, how many options you need to get into that space, and then picking your metalwork and your display method for getting that product to look as strong as it can is the fundamental to any space and using space values, which is why I want to talk about it so much today.
Okay, a few more here. Should you mix sale price product and full price product?
Right, so we actually do this sometimes at Joules, and we call it, I've lost the theory. It's a surprise and delight, and this can be because you've made your sale products look so amazing that actually when someone picks it up, they're like, oh wow, I've got a bargain, so they've been surprised and delighted. It totally depends, again, on your space and your density. So if you've got a large volume of sales stock that you want to clear, then I would change all of my merchandising tips to support that. So all side facing, you can block it to size if it's smaller, or block it to commodity if you've got a large volume of lots of the same product. But if you've only got a few items of sale product and you're finding that they're not clearing sat on a fixture, then give it a go. If it works with the colour palette and it works with the look and the end use that you're creating for your customer, so remembering that lifestyle and collection, the outfitting pieces, then it can actually help really enhance it. What I will say on that is the one pick rail that I tried to go through, but it really works so brilliantly as a practical exercise, is a brilliant way of enhancing your older product and your past season's product and giving it new life. And if you don't do a one pick rail and really look at your colour stories and refresh them as a whole, they will be stagnant. It's very difficult to do that without doing that complete refresh.
Right. And on that, how often would you recommend re-merchandising an area?
So again, completely depends on your sales, for example. So if I let you know at Topshop, because it was so fast forward, obviously it was fast fashion, we would re-merchandise those spaces twice a week. So a trend which was, say, I don't know, 1,500 square feet would be re-merchandised, twice a week, because we're getting 30 new lines a day. If you're only getting new lines once a month, I'd encourage you to do it once a month, a complete refresh. That doesn't mean you can't freshen up the odd fixture, move things around, bring things into your front-facing position and rotate your stock. But it's quite time consuming. You're as a skilled person doing a big department, you're looking at half a day to a day's work of completely refreshing that department. So it is a lot of work. And I would definitely say, if you can, a minimum of once a month, when you get your newness in, it will help refresh the look and feel of all of it. Your orientation spaces, so like your table promotions and things like that, you've got customers that are coming in every week, that needs to be fresh. Those, especially your orientation and your primary spaces, you want newness, you want new product there, you want to excite and give them another reason to buy something and keep shopping with you.
Okay, that's great. Just the last few here, because I know we've run way over time.
That's fine.
Any tips for displaying long items such as jumpsuits and long dresses?
Yeah, it's such a nightmare with them when these come in. I mean, at Joules stores, we actually got an arm specially adapted that plugs in and increased the height. 4-ways are brilliant for these. So you can get generic off the peg, and we call them 4-ways. I've heard them called so many different things, but essentially it's a fixture that's across and the arms move up and down. When you can move them up, they can they can do the long product. I would use that generally over using a wall space, especially if you're linear tight. So if your store is quite high density, I would only do them on floor fixtures. And the reason why is because on one of those arms, you can get bolt-on arms at the bottom of them, but generally people don't. So you're using the same amount of linear, you're not losing any linear. If you take it into a wall space, you're losing possible selling space above or below it. So I would always go for floor on that. Other options, you can, if you could showcase it on a mannequin, for example, a jumpsuit, next to it you could half fold on a clip hanger, providing you're showing it on a mannequin or showing it as a way to wear, because then it's still obvious that that's that product, especially if it's in a print that's really obviously that product.
Great. Okay, really useful advice. And this is the very last question.
Okay.
What do you think about using props in clothing displays?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I worked for Selfridges, so I was the queen of props. We made our own. So, but it has to be right. So they can add clutter, and this is where I go back to the very first point around a story. What's your story? Now, I worked with an independent department store. We were a customer of Joules, but we came and gave them some advice anyway. And it was around like, what's your USP? So they wanted to use props, and it was like, well, what do you want to be known for? And one of the things were bicycles, or, you know, there was a link to bicycles with it. And there can be a really quirky way of seeding them into your story and making them part of your branding, but it's the right props. So for example, if you wanted to use plants, make sure you're consistent. So if it's in women's wear, for example, I would use the same type of prop throughout that gender department. You could then move it on for children or for menswear, but don't go prop mad. Don't think, for this brand, I'm going to do this type of prop. For this brand, I'm going to do this type of prop. It will lose all credibility. It has to be clean. So sometimes less is definitely more. And always remember telling that story and getting that impact.
Okay, thank you very, very much. That was really fascinating, Katy. Thank you so much. I think there's loads of hints and tips that we can take away with us. Thanks for all of your time today, and thanks to all the attendees. And I'm going to close the meeting.
Thank you.
Bye.